Welcome to the ACF Chefs Forum. We're delighted to have you join us for today's webinar, the Chef's Balancing Act. It's going to be a special thank you that goes out to the National Pork Board. Did you know the pork tenderloin is a nutritional superstar? It qualifies as extra lean, comparable to skinless chicken breasts, and both pork tenderloin and pork sirloin meet the American Heart Association's heart check criteria. Just a reminder for all chefs out there, for the best results, cook your pork chops, steaks, and roast to an internal temperature of 145 degrees, followed by a 3-minute rest. At ACF, we're committed to bringing you the valuable insights tailored specifically for you, the leaders of the food service industry. At ACF, we're committed to bringing you valuable insights tailored specifically for you, the leaders in the food service industry. Before we dive in, a quick note, we'll be addressing as many of your questions as possible after the presentation. Please use the chat function to engage with fellow attendees and the Q&A function to submit questions for our speakers at any time during the session. Let's get this conversation started in the chat. Tell us where you're tuning in from today. I'm Chris Tanner, Executive Director of the American Culinary Federation. It's my pleasure to introduce our esteemed presenters. Let's meet today's first presenter, Master Chef Ken Arnone. Chef Arnone is one of 74 certified master chefs in the United States and a board member of the American Master Chefs Order. His culinary journey began at the Culinary Institute of America, and he has honed his skills and renowned establishments like Cuisine Actuelle, the Salish Lodge, and New York Marriott Marquis. Since 1999, Chef Arnone has operated a global consulting firm, sharing his culinary expertise with a wide range of clients, including restaurateurs, hotels, universities, and corporations. He has also served as the corporate chef for Colavita USA for the past 20 years, developing over 30 retail food products. Additionally, Chef Arnone co-authored the Food and Wine Pairing book, Pairing with Masters, and has competed in the Culinary Olympics, earning over 20 medals, including several golds and Best in Show honors. Our second presenter, Master Chef Gerald Ford, is one of only 74 Master Chefs as well, and is a former captain of the American Culinary Team USA. With 30 years of experience in the food service industry, Chef Ford has been part of the opening teams for prestigious establishments like the Mandarin Oriental in Columbus Circle, New York City, and several restaurants across New York State. He has worked for the Four Seasons and Ritz-Carlton hotel companies. For the last 13 years, Chef Ford has held leadership roles at platinum-level private clubs, including executive chef, culinary director, and executive sous chef. As a founder and culinary director of Legit Concepts, Chef Ford is dedicated to improving the quality of life for chefs and culinarians worldwide by providing tested and developed tools and systems. At this time, I'm pleased to hand the presentation over to Chef Arnone. Chef, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chef Tanner. I appreciate your kind words, the introduction, and thank Chef Ford for joining as well today. The first thing I'd like to do is thank all of you for taking the time out of your day to join us here today for the webinar on the Balancing Act. And this was really born out of several conversations that I had with Chef Tanner about some different topics that would be helpful and useful to chefs all across at different stages of their career. And the big question is, why am I qualified to give this presentation? So the first piece I would say is that as Chef Tanner mentioned, I've had my own business for 25 years. I've been the corporate chef for Colavita for about 23 years. I have a family. I have two sons in their 20s. Very close with my family and friends. From a health standpoint, I'm basically a train wreck, although I look really good. I've had 2 different types of cancer, 2 spine surgeries, numerous other surgeries, some really pleasant hereditary issues that I've dealt with over time. The positive side is that, number one, I'm here today. Number 2 is that I am very physically active, and that really, depending on my stage in life or what I have going on, that could be weightlifting in the gym, it could be jogging, running, races, marathons, half marathons. I could be doing sprint triathlons, adventure racing, etc. One of the pieces to understand is, what does the lack of balance do to us, right? And I think I know me personally, and I believe Chef Tanner and Chef Ford have experienced this as well. First being is that we are simply not as effective at our job because we're not the best that we can be. That also trails over into your personal life as well. It without a doubt affects our relationships, those around us. It has an effect on our mental and physical health. And it represents a problem for our confidence and feeling of self-worth, as well as our contribution. So really important. As we get started here, I'm going to relay one story that I believe is kind of significant that, stood out for me. Some years back, I was working with a restaurant chain in the Midwest, and we had just brought on a new executive sous chef. And at that point, I believe they had about 30 some odd restaurants. And I remember he had just been brought on. He picked me up at the airport, and I literally couldn't sit in the front seat of the car because there were clothes, bags, empty water bottles. The car was a complete disaster. He was disheveled, and this was our first meeting. I didn't say anything right off the bat. I worked with him for a few days that week, came back a month later for the second trip, and it was a similar experience. And it was a tough conversation that I had to have. And I also took some feedback from his direct report. And, I explained to him about balance in your life. And out of that conversation, he provided me with some detail about some personal issues, et cetera. And we mapped out a plan for him. And it was really tremendous to see how he employed some of these techniques for organizing his life and balancing that really helped him. And he was very successful. So that was something that was tremendous. What are some of the most important factors that we face in our industry? Because let's face it, our industry is challenging. We're always faced with stressful days, who called out, what pop-up we have. We have issues with, could have issues with human resources. We're working 14 hours a day, 16 hours a day. Some chefs are working 6, 7 days a week in a busy season. And that's our career. So it's critical that we ensure we manage our time in our career. Now, that said, the reality is that when you're earlier on in your career or starting a new job, that balance might be shifted towards your career as opposed to balanced with your personal life, your family time, et cetera. And I know for me, that is without a doubt the case. Years ago, when I was at the Marriott Marquis, I was working 14, 16-hour days, and often I was on 6 to 7 days. I lived in the hotel at 3 different points during my 7.5 years there. I was terrible at balance. I had to learn how to reel that in. Same thing in my next position when I taught at the CIA, where I thought I was going to have more balance in my life. It really actually didn't work out that way. I was on the culinary team. I missed my older son's first and second birthday. And I had to then leave and start my own business, which again made me focus more on my career than my personal life. But I believe that's really where I learned and started to understand the importance of stepping back and creating organization in my life. And I see that Chef Ford has joined us now. Thank you, Chef. What I'd like to do is now, as I just talked about how that balance changes, I'm going to stick Chef Ford with a question right out of the gate. And he has his business, which is relatively new. It's very early on, I would say. In addition to that, he has a brand new family. A beautiful wife, Carol Ann, and absolutely incredible daughter, Rebecca. So very briefly, Chef, how are you currently dealing with developing a new business and being a new dad?
Well, I think like with anything, when you first start doing it, it's messy. So I think that's the first part is it's a mess, right? I have the best of intentions. I have a good plan. I'm a bit of a planner. I think you've told me in the past that I'm a little bit too much of a planner, which has definitely bit me as well. But no, I went into the business with a plan. I thought I had a really good plan with the kid, but I also knew that chaos was going to ensue. So I kind of, it's a mix of having a good plan and rolling with the punches. And I think on a real tactical level, I have a daily schedule that I try and live by. I don't always hit my marks, but it just as much as in an operation, we have lunch service or we have dinner service that happens at a regular time. I try and have those same anchors that I tie the rest of my day to.
Yeah, so I believe the moral of the story is that by and large, you try to control the day instead of the day controlling you.
Absolutely.
Is that
Yeah,
what-
reaction is inevitable, right? And if I can at least plan for the majority of the chaos, I have less chaos that I have to react to.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, now I'm going to shift that to Chef Tanner. So you have a new job as the executive director in the ACF. You have two young children, younger than me, and you do a fair amount of travel with your new job, and you try to squeeze in some powerlifting, which we'll talk about later. But how are you managing this currently with your new job, your family, etc.?
Yeah, I've changed jobs, numerous times over the years. That's just as we always do. But I think if you don't have some sort of structure, as Chef Ford mentioned, that kind of drives your day to day, then whatever job you end up going into ends up organizing you more than yourself. So I've always structured my day around my morning routine, which is getting up at a certain time, making sure that those are unchangeables. And I have to have a certain amount of things that I do during different times first thing in the morning. So it doesn't matter if I'm doing this job, my last job, I always prioritize it. That family piece that you'd mentioned is, I always make time for my family before I come into work and when I leave from work as well. And people will say, oh, well, you have an office job. Well, I also have to change prioritizing my health. So, I used to get 10,000 to 20,000 steps easily my last two jobs. But now I'm sitting in a chair most of my day now. If I didn't get up out of this chair and make sure that I purposely walk, I had to change my schedule a little bit to include cardio as part of my structure too. So I don't like reacting to things, as Chef Ford mentioned. So my emails are checked at certain. So you asked about an email earlier before we even got on here.
Yeah, right.
My emails are only answered 3 times during the day during my schedule because those are the things I have to react, and I don't want to change my schedule during certain times. So I structure my day around those so that and giving myself enough time to answer those things, but I want to be able to be proactive about those things. So I think it's based around structuring your day, and people often say they don't have time to do certain things. I think it's because you don't structure your day properly.
Yeah, or you don't prioritize and make time. So
Absolutely.
which we're going to talk about later. And I'm just going to piggyback on that a little bit because you said something about the morning. And I know that there are some people that are morning people like myself and some people that are not morning people. And that's okay. With the exception to understand, regardless of what your work schedule is, it's important to have structure to your day.
Mm-hmm.
And I happen to be a morning person, so it's very rare occasion that I'm not out of bed at 5:30 in the morning, and I'm already plotting what's going to go on for today. What are the potentials for me to encounter? What do I have to be concerned about, etc. So, okay, now we're going to talk about growth, which is another item that's important to balance in your life. You should be defining goals for yourself because they drive your path. If you don't have career goals, how do you know what path you should be taking to achieve those? And in order to have balance in your life, it's important to understand what that path looks like so that you can actually move forward. Another piece is stability. Often our industry is plagued with instability, whether that has to do with you not wanting to work somewhere anymore, or there's a new GM, there's new ownership, etc. And we have to combat that. And I would say that it's really critical to ensure for your mental state that you're in a healthy environment. Ensure that most days you enjoy going to work. I'm not going to tell you that there aren't going to be bad days. That's a reality. But most days you should be excited to go into work. And if you're not, you might want to reassess where you're actually working. This that positive nature is going to make you more effective, not only at your job, but effective as a leader. And at the end of the day, as chefs, that's what we do. We lead, we coach, we teach, we train. And that's really important. And that leads into delegation, because most of us are control freaks. And we often say, or often hear, if I don't do that myself, it's not going to get done right, so I'm going to do it myself. And yeah, that's true, right? Because that's Einstein's definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So as chefs, we need to do more teaching. We need to do more coaching and training and pass off tasks to develop those around us, our team, which enriches them, makes them better, which should be giving you time and the opportunity to spend on items that require your focus, that are more valuable for you. So that delegation one is something that's really critical. The other part of balance is professional development. And, I think this is a challenge for a lot of people, because to be able to have a career and be able to have family and friends, when do you make time for professional development? And this looks different for different people. Some people read a lot. I know Chef Ford, for example, often posts on Instagram or other social media channels some of the books that he's reading, or those that are actually more meaningful to him. Some people might do a stage in a restaurant where they feel they can learn from, or dine out in the right places, I'm going to say. Team up with other chefs to do events in local areas. Network with the culinary community. This is the American Culinary Federation, after all. And here's one that for me is a little bit tricky, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. Social media, right? Because social media can be a really amazing tool. And it's given us this kind of, celebrity status that was basically a springboard off of the Food Network and the TV chefs, etc. However, there's a lot of bad information out there. And if you as a chef are using that for professional development, and you're watching someone make a pate or a terrine, and you're saying, well, that's the gold standard, you have to worry, or I should say, be concerned that that's actually proper technique. And you're not just saying, well, I read it on Wikipedia, so it must be true. So something to think about from a professional development standpoint. Now, the next component is financial security. This is one that I don't think our culinary community puts enough emphasis on. And what does financial security have to do with balance in your life? Well, here's the reality. If you're not conscious about understanding how to manage a budget, your budget, no different than if you're managing a budget at a club, a restaurant, a hotel, and you're not saving for your life, it doesn't matter if you're early on in your career and you want to go to Italy and you want to travel in Sardinia and understand and learn more about Sardinian cuisine for your vacation or for professional development, or if you're older in life, like me, and you're thinking, well, gee, how much longer am I going to do this for? And you're planning for your retirement. So that financial stability helps you not only today, but it helps your future. And it's certainly worth spending some time, if you're not familiar with it, spending time on that. Okay. And I know, Chef Ford, you and I have had this conversation over the years quite a few times. How do you approach that?
Well,
Aside from working harder and making more money.
Well, I think it's about being intentional with what your outcome is, right? Like if you're not working for today and for tomorrow, then inevitably tomorrow is going to come and you're not going to be ready for it, right? So, like I said, I lean towards planning. I lean towards organization, and so I think it's really important to think of things in terms of like needs. And I always reference back to like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food, water, shelter. And then we can start talking about comfort, and we can start talking about relevance and legacy and all of those things. Like legacy doesn't matter if you're not covered for food, water, and shelter. And that's today and tomorrow and next week and 10 years from now. So it's really important to me to at least have a structure and have confidence in the fact that I'm not going to find myself without anything, without food, water, shelter, those things, building a runway and making sure that if I do lose my job, that I've got 6 months of living expenses covered, and getting really clear on what I need to spend in a month. You and I have talked about this a bit, right? I think it's about being a better chef at home and being a better husband and father in the kitchen, right? We all write a budget. So are you budgeting your life? Do you know what your cost of goods are for your home? Do you know what your, expenses are on a month-to-month basis? Do you have a pad? Because if you don't have a pad, that leads to bad reactional choices, right? And
Right.
not having confidence. So if I can have that pad and I can figure out how to get myself at least a few months of decision making or a few months of good choices, rest, relaxation, recovery. I've never been terminated from a position that's left me that shorthanded, but I've seen it from people that I've been very surprised would find themselves in that situation. So for me, I immediately thought to myself, I need to have a pad so that I can have that. And that to me gives me that security. Now, as far as the future goes, well, I'd love to be saving more. I started a business, so I'm not socking away as much cash as I'd like to be for the future, but I'm also kind of leveraging the work that I do now to try and build for that in the future as well.
But that I believe speaks to what I talked about earlier, which is different stages in your career and or work really requires you to shift, right? It requires you to be, listen, it's no different than I remember at the Marriott Marquis, we did 35 million in banquets. And I know that during the busy times, we didn't really have to stress over food costs that too much because we were really an operating machine. But during the slow times, you did have to pay more attention to it. And it's no different than financial planning and financial security. And so many of these things that we're all talking about from our, let's call it culinary world knowledge, are applicable to your life knowledge, right? And we're gonna touch base on that in a second. All right, we're gonna shift and talk about personal life here for a bit. Family and friends. There is no question that socialization enriches your life and has been proven to have a correlation between socialization and longevity. So it's critical to be able to separate some of that family time, right? Like earlier, Chef Tanner talked about when he's home being on. And Chef Ford just talked about when I'm being daddy, I need to be a great daddy, right? I can't just be the great chef at work and get home and say, I'm exhausted. Oh my God, I can't believe, I want to sit down. I want to watch TV. No, you had your time to be the great chef. Now it's your time to be the great husband or be the great dad, or mother, etc. So it's really important to understand that. Health, which is a big part of that balancing act for all of us. And that's because our industry is plagued typically with health issues, both mental and physical. And understand that positive thoughts and forces enable you to control your destiny. That's a reality. And negativity, whether that's negativity you're taking from home to work or from work to home, is like cancer spreading through an operation and spreading through your life. That's the reality. So it's important to be positive, number one. Number two, it's important to have some downtime. We all need downtime. And that looks different for different people. We're going to talk about exercise in a minute here. But I can tell you that it happens occasionally, hopefully not too much. But once in a while, my girlfriend will say, "Did you work out today?" I'm like, no. And she's like, "Yeah, I could tell. Maybe you want to go for a run and get on the Peloton." And that kind of like is a little alarm bell for me, like saying, "Oh, oopsie, I guess I'm a little testy right now. So that's my downtime, right? Chef Tanner talked earlier about his time to answer his emails in the morning. One of the things about mental health is separating time. And social media, I talked about earlier, it's positive and it's negative. If you're someone that's spending countless hours scrolling all day, that's not healthy mentally, right? And that doesn't, it doesn't matter if it's, you know, something that you're looking at or being trolled by the lunatics out there. Create some time for that and allow it to be that time. You don't need to be constantly scrolling all day long. Make sure you're utilizing it as the right tool. Self-awareness, that mental self-awareness is huge. And this can also be physical. And what I mean by that is understand how much you can take on. Early on in my career, I was terrible at this. I would get phone calls. Yep. Can you do this? Yep, I can do it. I'll take it on. I'll take the project on. I'll do that. No problem. Load the plate up. Well, what's the reality? Is that would you rather do, you know, 12 things or 14 things at 80%, or would you rather do 8 or 9 things at 100%? I know what my answer is going to be, and I've gotten much better at doing that. But it took quite some time to get to that point. All right, now we're going to go from the mental to the physical part. Importance of diet. I find it incredibly ironic that as chefs, we work really hard to produce delicious food and to nourish others. Yet we often neglect ourselves. I didn't have time for lunch today. I didn't have time for breakfast. I didn't have time for dinner. I didn't grab something before we shut the kitchen down. Great, we're gonna go out and get a greasy burger, some pizza, some chicken wings, have a couple of drinks, and then I'm gonna go right to sleep afterwards. All really great recipes for health. Well, we're supposed to have nutritional knowledge and understanding and a background, yet very often we don't take care of ourselves. So we should be making the time to eat. We should be making right choices when it comes to eating. And now the big one that I know Chef Tanner is excited about, some form of physical activity. Have a routine. And listen, I know that there's, you know, people that are going to say, I don't like to work out. I don't like to run. I can't. I got a bad knee. My shoe hurts. That's okay, because there's things that you can find. And it can be walking for
Absolutely.
30 minutes. It could be a treadmill if you can't go outside. It could be doing yoga. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just the simple fact of engaging in something. And I'm going to make a really quick quote here. Harvard studies, regular aerobic exercise will bring remarkable changes to your body, your metabolism, your heart, and your spirits. It has a unique capacity to exhilarate and relax, to provide stimulation and calm, to counter depression and dissipate stress. Now, before I bring Chef Tanner on here, I'm going to say one thing. Unfortunately, I'm going to talk about something you brought up earlier. So last week, my younger son, who's general manager for a restaurant in New York City, came home and I said, are you going to work out before dinner? And he goes, nah, I walked 22,000 steps today. And I said, congratulations. That's not a substitute for a high intensity workout. So nope. Good for you. So he's like, you know, what are you talking about? I had 22,000 steps. I said, listen, that's great. I'm glad you walked in your 12-hour shift that you walked 22,000 steps. Go do a workout. I don't care if you do the Peloton for 20 minutes, go push some weights around. It's going to help you and it's going to make you feel better. One is not a replacement for the other. I'm not saying it's not good to walk all those steps in the day, but one is not a replacement for the other. So Chef, you're a big power lifter. So aside from in your normal day, also when you're traveling, how do you factor this in?
Okay, so I think I alluded to earlier, stating how my schedule hasn't changed from job to job. My schedule doesn't change when I travel either. So I literally, I wake up every day at 5. Sometimes when I'm traveling, I have to wake up even earlier, 4 o'clock. so I can make sure I make it to a gym. So it used to be years ago whenever I travel, especially when I worked for Campbell Soup Companies, all these places where I thought it was my job to go out and go eat different restaurants. Now my first thing is I look for so I do strongman competitions, not powerlifting. Powerlifting, they only do three things.
Okay.
We lift
Okay.
lots of different weird crap. So excuse my language.
All right.
Uh,
I've been.
yeah,
That's
I was
good.
being sarcastic.
Yeah.
But it's harder though. So and the reason I mentioned that is because it's harder actually for me to find the gym that I need to go to because we have a lot of weird stuff that we lift. So I plan, if I know that, so I was going to Grand Rapids for the last 2 days, a month ahead. I start calling around. I'll ask my friends that are strongman competitors. I'll look up on websites to see where there's a gym I can train at. And if there's not a gym I can train at, I have a coach. So I don't do just as many of us, we had mentors that helped us through our culinary career. I have a mentor who happens to be 15 years younger than me, helping me out with my strongman competition. We always surround ourselves with people who do better than us, so, who have achieved more than us. So it could be similar to them. That person happens to be 15 years younger than me, and I'm okay with that. So he also does my nutrition, as you were talking about nutrition. So I meal prep for my entire week. So when I travel, I bring all my food with me. So I eat 5 meals a day. I pack that into a cooler for each day. And then I also, a month ahead of time, call in and find a gym for me to train in. If I can't find a gym that does strongman, I'll have my coach modify my training to make sure that I'm still doing the training. There is no excuse not to do that training. I'll wake up earlier to make sure I get that because I got, like, just like now, I got a competition coming up in 2 weeks. So if I skip my training the last 2 days, I wouldn't have been able to be ready for the next competition because I will always podium in every competition I win.
So basically what you're saying is you don't allow your schedule to impact your execution, no matter
Absolutely.
what it is. Yeah.
And
So
if it does, I will adapt once in a while because inevitably the day becomes too long and I also don't want to injure myself. So if I ended up having to be, doing too much in that day when we're traveling, I'll modify my day, but there's no excuse. I will find something else that I could do. That movement, as I mentioned earlier, that walking, that, as you said, your son had to make sure you get that
yeah,
movement. 3 hours. So I'll give you another quote. 3 hours of elevated heart exercise, which could be 15 minutes a day, will give you enough, not quite, the time's off a little bit, but 3 hours each week of elevated heart will lower your mortality rate by 50%. So all you got to do is move for 3 hours every week. It doesn't count work. Raise that heart
right.
rate to a certain level. So
Yeah, it's certainly a huge part of longevity, and I believe happiness at the end of the day.
I don't know if you have
All
to
right.
put 300 pounds over your head to do that, though. So
No, but listen, you need to find what works for you. That's what you need to do.
Yeah.
Also, it's important to listen to your body. Know your body and listen to it. Back in 2015, I wasn't really good at doing that, and I was having a tough year. I was on the road for 3 weeks a month for most of the year. I was feeling pretty bad. I just chalked it up to my schedule and my lack of balance. And I was overseas. My appendix ruptured. I had to have emergency surgery in Bangkok. And when I woke up, the doctor said, "Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't take your appendix out because you have a tumor and the tumor ruptured." Now, I got lucky because I'm here today, but I didn't listen to my body. And I should have listened to it throughout that year. And I should have gone to the doctors and I should have figured out what was wrong. I didn't do that. So the moral of that story is know when to push through, because I'm a big advocate of pushing and being hard, and being persistent, but also know when it's time not to push. That's really an important thing, and when you need to get treatment or take a break, etc. Sleep. This is really important for balance. I know Chef Ford, we've talked quite a few times in the morning, and sometimes he just doesn't get some sleep, which is often neglected. And again, that happens to be because he has a beautiful baby in the house. But it might be from stress of work. It might be from your poor schedule or not managing your time properly. And so it's really critical to be able to manage that. So if you get home and it happens to be late at night, you know what? you need to disconnect, get off of the computer, the phone, not the TV, have some wind down time, be able to relax and set your body up for successful sleep. That's really critical.
Can I hop in
If
there
you're
for a
not,
second?
yeah, please.
You know, Chef Tanner was just talking about his morning routine. And I really wasn't really aware of it until I was working with a coach who was helping me get my business up and running. And we worked on an evening routine, a pre-bed routine, right? And really, like, the idea is that the morning routine starts at night for me, you know, and I had never actually thought to talk about this, but quite honestly, like, the wind down for sleep. When do I stop looking at devices? How do I lower the temperature in the house? You know, and kind of go through this protocol, you know, take my vitamins, drink my magnesium, go to bed, you know, like, what does that routine look like? And then what is my cutoff? And, you know, that way I know that I can get my sleep, especially after neglecting it for years on the Olympic team and, you know, running an operation. You know, the world is crazy for sure, but really prioritizing that sleep regardless of what time it is, so that when I'm traveling, I still know my wind down routine and I can scale when my dinner reservations are, or if I'm not going to dinner. Very strange from where I was 45 years ago, but evening
Yeah,
routine too.
but
Can I
it
add something?
helped-
Can I add
helped
something
you.
to that too? Utilizing this tool, I think, helps out with a lot of things and also hurts a lot of things. So use the tools that are on here to help that. So I'm blessed that I have an 8 to 6-ish job at this point, and we'll call it 9 to 5, whatever you want. So I know at 6 o'clock, I'm done with work. I turn the work email. I have a thing on here. I don't get any more notifications on my emails come through. And I have certain people that I block phone calls at certain points because I'm spending time with my family and making sure I'm going to sleep. I also set timers on here for social media. So I am only able to access social media during my work hours here, because some of the stuff, most of the stuff on here I'm doing for social media is here for the ACF. I cannot access social media anymore outside of that time because I want to make sure I'm spending time with my family and getting to bed. So utilize the tools that we have to be able to help out a lot. I think as well too helps.
And that's a great segue into useful tools before we open up for any questions. Map out your goals, create a plan. And that could be as simplistic as writing them out. It could be a lot more detailed, right? Some people like to do vision boards. Whatever it is that works for you, create a set of goals and create a path, a plan to get there. That's really, really important. You know, you wouldn't approach a week that you had 14 banquets in haphazardly. You'd sit down and write notes on the BEO. You'd write out your order lists. You'd write out your prep lists based on the day's production and what the shelf life is of that product. You'd ensure that you had the right staffing levels to execute for these events. You'd make fire sheets, and you'd ensure that you were covered on all bases to go into this week. Well, it's no different than your life. So plan, set goals and plan accordingly in order to be able to get there. And there is a famous quote out there that says, write the vision and make it plain. It happens to be from the Bible. I'm not very religious and I'm not preaching here, but it's a great saying. Create a realistic schedule for yourself and prioritize, right? Very often I see people loading up on their plate and they get disappointed because they weren't able to get 50% of their list done. Well, that's part and parcel for not making a proper list and not a realistic list for yourself. Set yourself up for success and actually enjoy, bask in the pleasure of seeing that you were able to reach that goal today of crossing all of these to-dos off of your list. And for me, I have a few different lists. I have a daily list that I have to get done today. I have a list that I need to get done in the next 7 to 10 days. I have the next month, and then I have maybe the next 3 months, things that I can push back a little bit. And then I have really long-term goals, and I'm constantly revising those lists, updating them. And if something stays on there too long, I have to ask myself why. What is that still doing on there? Why haven't I gotten to it? And there are different reasons for that. Maybe it was just a misaligned goal. Maybe it was something I didn't need to do, or maybe I'm procrastinating and I need to simply get it done. That self-evaluation is really important. And by the way, these lists should be for your career, for you personally, for you professionally. And incorporate in there, as we've talked about, health and exercise. Prioritize based on capacity, right? Understand when it's okay to say no and when you can't take something on because you're not going to do a great job at it. Stick to your routine and do not find excuses why you can't do something. Revise and adjust your plan. This is really critical for growth, both at home and at work. Okay, so now we're going to open up the floor to some questions for myself, for Chef Tanner, for Chef Ford.
We actually don't have any questions that came through, so I think we can continue talking between ourselves and bring us some other points.
Okay, great. So I'm going to ask both of you, what tools are you using? And Chef Ford, you answered a little bit of this, but what other tools are you using, both of you, to help you achieve balance?
You can go ahead first if you want to, Chef Tanner.
So I call my 5 F-bombs. So I try not to swear as much as possible. So I call it I start every single day. I have
that covered for you. Don't worry about it.
What's that?
I have the cursing covered for you. Don't worry about it.
So I say it's my faith, family, finance, fitness, and friends. So I kind of covered almost everything you said, Chef Arnaud. So every morning I spend 30 minutes in my Bible study. I will also read at least 10 pages of a book. For my family, I'm always doing at least one chore to help my wife out every single day around the house. Finance, I'm checking my finances every day, as Chef Ford was talking about earlier. I have different tools that I utilize on my phone for doing that, but I also keep a daily budget and making sure that my wife's not spending too much of our money. My fitness, we've already covered that. My training is two hours a day for 4 days a week, and then also my cardio. And then my friends, I always make sure I'm contacting someone who I haven't talked to for at least 30 days each day. And that kind of drives my day throughout the day.
Excellent. Chef Ford?
So, you touched on a little bit of this, and I'm going to kind of piggyback. I'll try and ad lib a couple different things in there because I definitely, I'm very much so on board. I like the 5 F-bombs. I do like that. For me, gratitude starts off my day, right? Because I think it's really relevant, and it helps my state by far for setting me up for the day to be grateful for everything that I have and everything that I've been able to work for and the opportunities. But, tool-wise, I spend a lot of time on my vision and making sure that I'm clear on it and how I'm going to get there. So writing a roadmap, I think, there's a tool that I've developed or that I've worked with and I developed through my business with objectives, key results, and key performance indicators, right? So taking my vision and actually putting it into like a workable solution. Something that I've developed and I started using about 5 years ago was my must do's and must not do's, kind of like the 10 commandments, actually, like things that you should do and things that you should never do. And I keep a list of 10 of both of those things. And, one of those things that happens to be on there is, I won't be out at a bar after 10 p.m. Like that's a must not do for me because, well, I live my life. I'm in my 40s now. I have a wife and a kid, and that's more important to me for my lifestyle. So I think setting parameters that you want to live by and sticking to them, which, to your point is super critical. And then what fills in the blanks? A daily checklist. It's Wednesday. So right. I know I need to work on next week's YouTube video, and I need to double check that if I need to transfer money from one account to the next, that I do that today. And I need to make sure that I've got my emails going out for the assessment program. You know what I mean? So I've got my daily checklist, just like I would in operations, and try and leverage human nature and make that as much of a pattern as humanly possible. And it just gets easier over time.
If I could just add one thing too, for obviously members, get yourself something like this. So this is a Fox Planner, I think is the brand. You're gonna go through like 10 or 15 of those until you find the one that you like. This happens to be the one that I like. But so those of us who organize ourselves, so there's day to day, there's week to week. So mine does monthly. It gives all my priorities for the entire year. There's a quarterly check-in, there's a weekly check-in, et cetera, to what Chef Ford said. Update, both of you said, updating that on a regular basis, I think is important because your priorities are going to change day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year. So I think it's important to utilize that tool and stick to it, and don't forget to use it, and make sure if you're traveling, bring it with you, all those sorts of things. So we did get a couple questions. I can add in here too.
Before you do that, actually, I want to jump off of that for one quick second as well. I talk about working on segueing the life, right? The kitchen life and the home life. Just like you would plan for an event and things like that. One of the things my wife and I started doing was a 30, 60, 90. So like at least once a month, we meet and discuss the month ahead, 2 months ahead, and 3 months ahead, just like we would go through almost a BEO meeting, maybe less frequently, but at least once a month, we're talking about the month ahead and the month in review, and then we're looking a little bit further out so that we're on the same page. My business is unique. Obviously, I'm learning as I'm growing a business because my needs in my business, my time needs in my business change, but that forces me to really communicate that with somebody who supports me endlessly. And I want to make sure that I'm supporting her and our kid the same way. And it's almost the same thing that I would do with an assistant or with my executive sous chef or my sous chefs. Open the lines of communication. And for me, it's on the calendar. So I'm gonna do it, right? And I guess that's another tool that I have to mention. Like, you have a calendar, use it, put it on the calendar. Because for me, like, if it's on my calendar, I can't miss it. I can't make the excuse. And if you can share your calendar with your spouse, share your calendar with your spouse. Like,
we do that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously that you're working on the relationship and your family time, right? Because that's the benefit of doing that. And it's no different than, ensuring that you make date night with your partner. That you have time alone and time away from the stresses of life, family, etc. It's the same exact thing.
I don't think Chef Ford's going to have that for a while with a very young one in the house. So we're just getting there with 9 and 11-year-old in the house.
My mom's coming to town, so I think we actually have a date scheduled for Friday.
Nice.
Look at that. There you go. There's date night.
It's been 17 months.
Questions?
So I guess this one's specific to you, Chef Ford, but I think any of us can answer it. I'm not as good at this, but if you would emphasize what your wind-up routine is at night. So I think it's what you alluded to earlier, Chef Ford. Mine is literally just going through and reviewing the day simply, but I would love to hear, I think they'd love to hear both of your night routines.
So for me, 7 o'clock, which obviously I'm not in operations anymore. So let's be clear. In 2019, at the end of 2019, I left operations to go all in on my business. So my day is a little bit different. My day starts at 7 and ends at 7. So at 7 o'clock, I'm done reviewing emails. Like, I don't do emails after 7 o'clock. Like, that's a cutoff for me. And then I give myself until 7:30 to look at my day ahead the next day, kind of write out my objectives, double check the things that I need to double check. And then the office lights get turned off at 7:30. I go into like a 30-minute wind down where, this is a little fluid because we have a kid that sometimes sleeps and sometimes doesn't. So I either hang out with my wife or I try and get the kid to sleep. Like, it's one or the other. But then from there, it's literally very granular. By 8:30, brush my teeth, reduce the air to 69 degrees, make sure the fan's turned on, make sure all the curtains are closed, and literally go through that. I drink magnesium because I find that it helps me sleep much more soundly. And we can talk a little bit more about the science behind that, but it's supposed to help flush your system and reduce stress in your body. And I find that I sleep much better when I drink it. So I drink it.
I use that as part of my pre-workout as well. I add to it. So, because it does help out with all that.
See, there you go.
For sure.
Yeah. And then from there, it's no screens after 8:45. I'm away to bed. Then, you know, try and fall asleep, which usually isn't a problem.
Yeah.
Minus my little ticking time bomb that's always there.
So I don't obviously have the addition of a young one, but I do similar. I try to shut down the computer around 7 o'clock-ish, said no later than 7:30, and then it's dinner with the family. And after that point, I try not to be on the phone. I call it the idiot box. Of course, if there's something coming in, I'll take it, but I'm typically not answering emails. I'm not on my phone in bed scrolling. I make sure to disconnect that. My girlfriend and I have conversation time where we're just talking to each other. Anything that we didn't get caught up about the day while we were both working, anything that we need to get done, whether it's tomorrow or in the next few days. And then, usually we pick something that we both want to watch and wind it down, and that's it. And there'll be a cutoff time where one of us says, okay, I'm done, and that's when everything gets shut off. And so and I do have a similar routine with some magnesium and some supplements that certainly help out, and that's really the PM plan.
Yeah, mine's much I shut down my electronics at 6 just because I'm trying to be much more intentional with being around with my family in the evening. I would say the evening routine is my wife watches TV till about 11 o'clock at night, but she wakes up a lot later. She homeschools our kids, so I usually try to get to bed by 8:30. I have a CPAP because my neck is 19 and a half inches round. So mine goes on and I fall right to sleep. But it honestly, of all the things here, you both reminded me that I need to work on probably a better PM routine as well. So we're always learning something from each other.
Yeah, which is important, right?
Yeah. And I've had one at different times. It's just one of those things that you got to keep on top of, as we're mentioning. Got a couple more questions here. Chef Arnone, someone's looking to see when you might try to republish that book again.
That's a really great question. So I'm actually in the process right now of sourcing an online printer/publisher and working with Jennifer to do a second edition.
It's a great book.
It is.
Thank you. I don't have a specific date right now, but I am working on it. And they can email me through my website, chefarnone.com, and I can get back to them as soon as I have an answer on that.
And as soon as you find out, you let me know, and I'll send it out to all the members too.
Yeah, I would absolutely love that.
It's cool that I remember recipe testing for that 23 years ago.
There's gonna be a question that's alluding to some of that, Chef Ford, in a second here after I answer this one real quick question. Someone asked what was the roadmap that I mentioned earlier is the 5F by 5F bomb. So it's faith, family, finance, fitness, and friends. So that's an easy one. Last question I currently have in here. This is to Chef Arnone, and it's actually technically to go to both of you. It says you were one of Chef Ford's mentors to the CMC process. What is one vital piece of advice you shared with him prior to him passing, and what is one piece of advice for anyone looking to take the CMC?
I don't know that I could pinpoint one piece of advice. Chef Ford was teaching assistant at the Culinary Institute of America, and we developed a close relationship, friendship, personally, professionally after that, and we've always stayed in touch. So I would ask him that question. What was the most valuable piece of advice for him? And then I can answer the second part of that question.
Well, it's difficult to pinpoint one because you're talking about, we met in 1999. And there's been a lot of life lessons that have come along since then. I started doing dinners with you shortly after that. I would say, I guess one of the ones that stands out the most is never give away flavor. I think that's probably one of the easiest to coin. And then actually seeing how that evolved over the years, actually seeing it play out. And I guess what comes to mind is working on a nutritional segment and you taking a rabbit carcass and showing me how to make a sauce at what, in 2017. So, and just completely walking me through knocking a carcass into smaller pieces and actually showing me what that meant as I evolved in the way that I saw food evolved. If that makes sense.
Sure.
And that's just
Yeah,
one. I mean, I call you in regards to my daughter not sleeping at night now. So it's, you know, our relationship has changed tremendously. Evolved. I like evolved.
Yes, evolved, and the good type of evolution, not the bad type of evolution. So,
Correct. I would agree.
I think that's great. You know, I think there's a lot of advice that I give that chefs ask questions about. You know, what's the best piece of advice you could give for the exam? And unfortunately, I think it's really hard to just highlight what's one best piece of advice. And that's because each individual chef out there is at a different point in their career and their life and their knowledge. And so, you know, it's almost irresponsible for me to just say, well, this is the one thing that you have to focus on. And the reality is that as strange as this sounds, the exam is about your knowledge, experience, and execution of the overall fundamentals of cooking. And although that sounds simplistic, it's really not that simplistic. And so, you know, a lot of times people say like, oh, well, you know, what's the secret to passing the exam? Or what did you do to pass the exam? Or can you share with me some of the tools that you used? I can do all of that, but that's not necessarily going to be helpful and or beneficial to you. And, you know, right now, Chef Ford is spearheading a AMCO, American Master Chef's Order, CMC candidate assessment program. And I'm mentoring right now one of the people that's involved in that program. And at that point, I'm able to offer much more specific guidance for one person. But I would say first understand what the exam is. Understand what the exam looks like today. Forget about what people that are not part of the exam, the ACF, AMCO, tell you about the exam, because probably not true. My grandfather said, believe none of what you hear and half of what you see. Really, truly learn what the exam is about. What's the format of it today? What are the segments? What do the evaluation sheets look like? And what are the expectations? That would be my advice in the jumping off point.
I think that's truly perfect. Chef Ford, you're going to say something?
Well, I was going to say, you know, and to go from there back to our conversation today, be honest with yourself. You know, when you cook, when you do what you do, when you put your food in front of somebody else, and when you're just in practice, just be honest with yourself and recognize when you need help, when you need to reach out, when you need to double down, when you need to start over.
I think what both of you mentioned, I think all three of us have mentioned, and obviously I haven't gone through the process myself, but the word coaching, I think, is important, and realizing that you don't know everything and trying to go into anything thinking that you're an expert before you even tell you, oh, I'm definitely going to pass this. You're not going to. I would say to any of you, reach out to these two chefs that are on here. They're the experts in the exam, and I think that they could certainly help you, and a number of AMCO members will actually help you out as well. So I've worked for 3 master chefs and learned invaluable skills from them. But one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing is because of men like you, chefs like you here on here, and that's why I also love having you. That 5th F is having you guys as friends too. So
Thank you, Chef. Actually, do you mind if I make a quick plug and for the assessment program?
sure.
Well, Brittany, if you're still there, if you don't mind, you could throw my email in the chat. And if anybody wants to ask questions or be a part of the next information session, you can email me at Gerald Ford at Legit Concepts, and I'll happily get you involved in the information session so you can learn how that works and how to be involved in that if that's something that you're thinking about.
And by the same token, Brittany, please, you can feel free to put my email in the chat as well. If anyone has any follow-up questions, feel free to send me an email, and I'm happy to respond to you.
Yeah, that's it. Any last statements before we wrap up, chefs?
I was going to say, because of the line of work that I'm in now, I work with chefs, right? And I provide tools like we talk about. My YouTube channel has a bunch of free tools kind of along what we discussed. This week, I just did a video on delegation and becoming a more effective delegator. So, Gerald L. Ford on YouTube, you can find some really great stuff that my goal is to create stuff I wish I could have found when I was looking for it. So that's there, and that's all free. That's there. It is my business, but YouTube is free.
Well, I would personally like to thank both of you chefs for joining me here today. And again, for the attendees, I want to thank you for taking the time to be here. I greatly appreciate that, and have a great week.
Thank you, Chef, for having me. Good to see you, Chef Tanner.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me to be part of it. Usually I just get to say hello and goodbye to everybody. So I'm happy I got to be part of the panel with you guys. So I appreciate it, Chef Arnaud.
Thank you.
All right, well, a huge virtual round of applause for both Chef Arnaud and Chef Ford. We truly appreciate both of you for being part of this. And we appreciate you both for taking the time and sharing your important insights for maintaining healthy, fulfilling life inside and outside the kitchen with us. Thank you as well for today's webinar sponsors, the National Pork Board. Please be on the lookout for a survey you'll receive in the next day or so, which you'll need to complete to earn your CEH units. We hope you'll join us for our next webinar, September 18th, as Chef Tim Recker opens up a conversation about September's trend, 5-star elegance for everyone. And to learn more about the upcoming webinars, visit acfchefs.org and click on the events tab. On behalf of the ACF National Office, thank you again to our presenters for bringing us this opportunity, and thank you for joining us today. Have a great and wonderful day. Appreciate you all. Bye.